Hello everyone, welcome to Texas Cyber Summit. I hope that you're going to have a great summit. This is one of the first talk that you are able to see, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. My name is Mathieu Saulnier, and as Tanya Jenka would put it, this is the slide where I'm supposed to tell you why I'm fit to give my own talk. I'm a technical director of advanced security at Syntax System. We are a managed ERP company, and we also offer managed security services for our customer. I'm also a core mentor for DEF CON Blue Team Village. I specialized in threat hunting and adversary detection. I love giving talks, and I had the honor to do so at DerbyCon, DEF CON Blue Team Village, NorthSec, Sector, a few B-sides, and even some SAN Summit this year. You can find me on Twitter at ScoobyMTL. Now, this is what we're going to talk about today. So this is what I call the full circle detection. So we're going to start with an idea, or what we call sometimes in threat hunting the hypothesis. Then we're going to see how we can generate events on like automatically and all the time whenever we need them. How we can build detections, how we can actually share those detections with the community, because sharing is caring. Then we're going to see how we can do some continuous testing of our detection, how we can build effective incident response playbooks, and finally, how we can train our analysts in order to be able to properly respond to those detections that we are building. Now I've just added this screen here, this slide, and this slide starts with the threat hunting in its center, even though if it's under, and it's show you how the different piece of security operations center or SecOps actually interact with each other. So first of all, threat hunting is often an input of the incident response process. It also feeds up vulnerability management if there's any vulnerability that I've found or misconfiguration that can easily be abused by an attacker. It also feeds, of course, detection engineering, like we're going to see in this presentation. And then threat hunting itself is fed by threat intel, of course, and by offensive security that will provide TTP, so tactic, techniques, and procedures. And here, just for the sake of being more complete, here are the other links between all of those things. Someone dubbed this slide the Olympic ring of InfoSec. I like the name, so you can use it. If you like what you see here, Roberto Rodriguez did a keynote at SAN's Threat Hunting Summit, and he talks about some of those things in other words. So not very surprising. I didn't see his talk when I presented this. I actually presented this just before his talk, this slides. But yeah, it's not very surprising that we think alike. Roberto is a very strong inspiration for me and his work, and also his work ethic, of course. Now, if you haven't noticed, this is a Venom themed presentation, and these full screen pictures are here solely so I can drink water unnoticed. So let's start with the idea or the hypothesis. There's a ton of places where you can actually get ideas on what to hunt for. My favorite is Twitter. There's always a lot of people on Twitter that shares very good information, very good ideas, even some queries. Some people say there's too much drama on Twitter. I would argue that it really depends on who you are following. I try to keep the people I follow to a very low number, and I'm usually very easily steered away from all of the drama. Another great place to get ideas for hunting is MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Also, other places that I like to look for are some Slack community, for example, the Blowdown Slack and the Threat Hunting Slack. If you need invitation for those, let me know. I can provide them at the end of this talk. There's also now a lot of community that have moved from Slack towards Discord, and it's the case from Trusted Sec, Black Hills InfoSec, and the DEF CON Blue Team Village. Again, if you need invitation for those, I'll be able to provide them. There's also a lot of people that likes to go through InfoSec news website. I use them a lot less, but they're still very valid points. So usually I see the interesting article are posted in Twitter, then I go read them. So yeah. And you might be lucky enough to have your own internal threat intel team, or maybe you're buying a threat feed from a third-party vendor. So those are also other good places to start and get some ideas on what to hunt for. So in this talk, we're going to start with the hypothesis from an article that was published by MDSec. The article was called A Fresh Outlook on Mail-Based Persistence. If you haven't read this article, this is the link. It is an extremely good article. I highly suggest you read it. It's now almost a year old, but it's still very relevant and very interesting to read. The TLDR of this article is that you can create macro as a user with just the user permission that will control what happens when Outlook receive an email. So basically, each time you receive an email, you can actually launch a VBA script that will execute any type of command. For example, establishing a reverse connection or a connection to your C2, to your infrastructure, install the service, whatever you can think of, because with VBA you can run PowerShell, and then of course we all know what you can do with PowerShell, which is pretty much everything that you can think about. In our test, this bypassed our EDR, and we successfully pop calc.exe. So let's get into the gist of it. So here is the exploit that you need to put in the VBA project.otm. I don't mean that, sorry, not the exploit, but the code. And as you can see here, this is where when you receive an email with the subject MDSec, you actually pop a box that says hack the planet and also run calc from the shell, and then it deletes the email. So 3 things that are done whenever an email is received with MDSec. So in our cases, that's what we did. And then we started looking, we looked for that, sorry, and then I'm sorry, I'll start this slide again. So because MDSec are such great folks, in all of their article, they also includes what you need to look for the detection. So here, there's 2 things that you need to look for. First of all, the creation or modification of the file VBA project.otm, and the modification or creation of the registry key that is listed here, and specifically if the value is put to 1, because 1 is the value for a run without notification. If you don't have sysmon, here's the sysmon IDs, but if you don't have sysmon, you can still detect those things with any good EDR or with the Windows event log system. So there's no real reason, nothing really forcing you to have sysmon for this specific detection. So what we did what I called a group hunt, or some people call it a hunt expedition. So every 2 weeks, we have an hour of learning that we call We Learn Wednesdays. And then we read the article, and then we started looking for the artifact in our environment. Luckily, we didn't find any, so our environment seemed to be clean. And then we started planting the evidence. So we modified the registry, and we edited the VBA project to copy the code that was in the MDSec article. Then we sent an email, we pop calc, as I mentioned earlier, and then we hunt again using our queries, and now, sure enough, the event was there. So that was a very interesting. I think everybody in the team learned a lot. Even myself, even if I was leading that threat hunting, there's a lot of things that I didn't know. I was really new in my team at that time, and I didn't know very much how the SIEM was working. And doing that allowed me to understand more how to build query for this particular SIEM. So everybody was winning, and it's very interesting activity. Now, um, when you do your hunting, do you find any event? Well, actually, when we're threat hunting, we kind of hope that we won't find anything because if we do, it's oftentimes a compromission and nobody likes to start an incident response full scale, or you need to deal with the false positive, which is not always fun. Um, and if you don't find anything, doesn't mean also that your query are not good. Like we saw in our own example, we're looking for something, we generated the events, and then we found um, the traces using the same query we used before. So how can we easily generate event kind of on demand? Well, there's the Atomic Red Team project that is built exactly for that. These are highly portable tests, very modular, that you can run at will in your environment and generate events. So I'm going to look a little bit how we can build an Atomic Red Team test. So this is an existing test that looks very much like the one that we want to create. So I took this and then this is what I created here. As you can see, I just had to change the attack technique ID, the name, the description, which was very easy. And then right here is the command or the core of the test. So it's 3 command and it's 3 Windows command line. So registry add, and then we add our registry key with the value of 1 to be able to run the macro without generating any events. Any alerts, sorry. And then we make a directory, the app data Microsoft Outlook, and then we create a fake file called vba.otm. In this type of test, we don't need a working VBA or a working OTM. We just need to see if we can catch the creation or modification of that file. And then down here, there's the cleanup phase. So this is what you run after you've run your test, after your detection have caught the events. And here we are deleting our registry key, and we are also deleting the OTM file. Most of your computer won't have that file, but be careful to not run these tests on production because this is deleting everything, whether there was something before or not. So if you run this on the computer of someone and he actually has some macros, legit macros in VBA project.otm, you'll just delete them and they might not be that thrilled about that. Yeah, another thing I want to say about Atomic Red Team is if you create a test like this one, you'll be featured in their monthly newsletter and you might even win a t-shirt. So that are 2 pretty good incentive, I believe, to create Atomic Red Team test. To create this test, it took me about 10-15 minutes. And one of the most difficult thing to do or to find was actually how to generate the unique number on line number 4 here where it says auto generate GUID. So yeah, I actually had to read the documentation to understand how to generate that number. I know, reading the manual. Who likes to do that? Now that you have a working test that you can generate all the time and that you have a hunt query that detects your event, it's time to convert your hunt into detection. But be careful, it's not all of your hunt or all of your query that will be worthy of an alert, right? Sometimes, and for me, an alert is equivalent to a ticket that you send to your SOC. But there's some things that are better suited for a report or maybe to a dashboard that your analyst will review daily, weekly, maybe even monthly. There's some things that are very low fidelity that you might want to review just once in a while. So yeah, said worthy of transforming, and here we have Venom and Tor. Not sure if you got the analogy, but yeah, that was it. And here, this little character here is called Sigma, and that's why it is on the slide. So how do you share your detection with the community? Well, there's a project called Sigma that exists and is built just for that. And I've talked about this project in many of my talks. It's one of the projects that I really, really love. And it's, again, very portable detection built in YAML. And then you can convert to pretty much any SIEM you are currently using. It's very easy to share the logic of your detection. You can share the known OS exclusion. And I can almost hear you guys, even if I'm pre-recording, that you're telling me, yeah, but if I provide my detection, the adversary will know what I'm looking for, and then they can bypass it. This is my intellectual properties. I'm not sure it's your intellectual property. In this case, this detections and this technique is in a blog post from MDSec. It's public knowledge. It's if it's anyone's intellectual property, it's MDSec. So you're not showing whatever you're doing to the adversary. You're just applying something that is common knowledge, and you're protecting yourself and the broader community. And personally, when I'm looking for a partner for security, I'm way more inclined to go over someone who shares with the community than someone that claims that they have blockchain AI stuff that blocks everything. I'd rather see what they're doing, how well they do things, and how modular their detections are. But maybe that's not me. So let's see how we can create a rule, a Sigma rule. So here we have an existing Sigma rules, and we have our new rule side by side. And as you can see, they are pretty much the same. So here's a closer look at our Sigma rules. And again, there's a lot of information, the title, the ID, which is the exact same tool that we used in Atomic Red Team to generate the ID, by the way. And then the description, the reference, the author, myself in this case, and then what are the tags? So what are the MITRE attack technique that apply to this detection? And then towards the end here, we have the log sources where we see that it's a registry event in Windows. And then below we have the registry in question right here, where we see that the target key and the target value. So if we see this combination, we generate an alert. So again, this took me maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to build this detection. And the longest part here was to actually figure out which MITRE attack technique applied to this. Now here is the second rule that we have to detect the other part. So we have another existing rule that we modify. Our rule is just beside, and again, you can see that they're very, very similar. Let's get closer, and we'll see that we are using the T1546, which is event trigger execution, and T1008, which is fallback channel. So here it is, and you can see again very easily in the detection and the selection here is just we look for a target file name with the name that ends with Microsoft Outlook VBA project.otm. So if we take those two Sigma rules plus the Atomic Red Team, this is about 30 minutes of my time that it took me to put that and give that knowledge back to the community. Now, you'll have a very hard time convincing me that you do not have 30 minutes in your week or in your month to help the whole community. If you have an argument against that, again, I'll be very happy to chat and try to change your mind. If you want to know more about how to create Sigma rules, there was a two-pager from Chris Sanders and Josh Brower from Active Network Defense. They also have a class. I think it's a 2-day class on how to build effective Sigma rules. Disclaimer: I didn't take the course, so I don't know if it's good, if it's bad, but I do know that Chris create very good material in general, but I haven't seen this particular one. Now, a pro tip: you can also use oncoder.io to convert your Sigma rules into the language of your SIEM if you don't know how, if you're very new to this. Most of the time, you just need to look at the detection and you can figure it out. But if you don't, and if you're very new, there's no problem. As you can see here on the screenshot, you have Elastic Query, QRadar, Splunk. I know ElastAlert is there as well, ArcSight, and a few other as well. But yeah, they got you covered. So keep this site in mind if you're very new at working with the Sigma rules. Now it's time to talk about the detection pipeline. It happened way too often in my career that I've seen a good detection stop working. And they stop working for a lot of different reasons. It might be because you have installed a new OS version or a new version of your software. Maybe you installed a new version of the parser from the SIEM vendor. Or maybe, and when you do that, sometimes the SIEM vendor just changed the mapping, either the name change or even the value themselves. Sometimes they change from one field to the other. And there's a lot of different reasons also that can happen. Maybe a firewall rule was put in place and now your traffic from one of your zone doesn't reach your SIEM anymore. Many things can happen. And we put a lot of efforts and pride in building those detection. So we want to make sure that they are always working. It also gave us a false sense of security sometimes because we think everything is working when it's not. And we want to test all the way from generating the events to the creation of the ticket or the population of our dashboards and report. And I saw a new project that is called Automata. That seems very interesting. I didn't have time yet to look into it, but if you're into automation and pipelines, I really suggest you give it a shot. It's an open source project, so go ahead, and if you use it, let me know how good it is. So yeah, we want to run our atomic red team as often as possible to make sure that the whole pipeline is working. One of the easiest way to do that is to actually use a scheduled task on Windows or cron job in Linux. We can also use Docker if you're a bit more advanced and if you're into containers and all of these good things. Might be even more efficient, but still a cron job or a scheduled task will get you started very quickly. It takes a few minutes to run these things. You need to put that source system into an allow or ignore list because you don't want to flood your analyst with alerts every day. If you run this every even if you start running every hour to test your pipeline, it's going to be crazy if you have like 40, 50, hundreds of detection that you're testing every day, or even worse, every hour. Your analyst will hate you. All right. So you need to put these tickets into a different ticket queue because you still need to make sure that the ticket is being created. Now, what you can do though is if you know that you have 50 tests and you receive 48 tickets, now you can generate a real ticket to your team in order to investigate why 2 of your alerts didn't fire. Yeah, I think that this is the link for the Automata tool below there. Now it's time to talk about Incident Response Playbook. For me, Incident Response Playbook are processes for your SOC analyst. And sometimes Playbook means very different things to different people. So that's why I want to go a little bit more in details here. But in this case, it would be Business Email Compromise, or BEC for short, that we see a lot used in the industry. So here I just want to show you plan, like incident response plan versus incident response playbooks versus what I called micro plays or work instruction. So usually when you think about an incident response plan, this is in CISP terms what you could also reference to as a policy, whereas sometimes the SOC manager and the more advanced analyst, they'll be more interested in the process. So the process would be, how do you deal at a high level with a ransomware, with business email compromise, with a phish, with account compromise, and all of those generic subjects. And then at the micro plays or the work instruction, it's really a step-by-step guide for your analyst, or a procedure, again, for the CISP fan in the house. And that would be things like, how do you submit a hash to VirusTotal or hybrid analysis? How do you retrieve a PCAP, maybe from your WAF or from your IPS? If you're an MSSP and you have different WAF that you're managing, maybe you have one for WAF 1 and one procedure for WAF B. How do you create user in all of your security tools? How do you contact your clients? And here I'm talking about clients as a very broad term. You don't need to be an MSSP to be able to contact clients. Maybe sometimes you'll have some different business unit that owns different systems. So you wouldn't want to call the sysadmin for the wrong machines. It's just going to lose time. So these are things that you need in your procedure as a SOC analyst to speed up the investigation and the response time. You have other example here, but that's the idea here. Policy, process, procedures. And here we're talking about process. So there's two open frameworks that I would recommend. There's the React one, and here is the address. And there's the Syntax one that we released in July at the SANS DFIR Summit. Here are two links for that presentation if you want to know more about our incident response playbook that we've open sourced. The first link is the original release at SANS DFIR, and the other one is a hacking cast from Wild West Hacking Fest that was recorded a few days ago, which is maybe a little bit longer. So it covers maybe a little bit more things. As I do these talks a second time, a third time, I try to add more things, and you'll see some of the slides in this deck were stolen from that deck and the other way around as well. So I really think that these two talks kind of go hand in hand. Now, just a very high level review of React. It's from the ATC project. It is extremely modular. It is open source. It is more of a framework, so you can think of it as Lego blocks. So you have all of these Lego blocks that you can pick and choose to build your perfect incident response playbook for whatever you want to respond to. It is currently very much a work in progress project. They have a lot of container, a lot of blocks, but they don't have a lot of depth into it right now. But they usually work in sprints, so I'm sure that they will go into it in their next sprint and add a lot of things. They are a very huge contributor to the two projects that I mentioned before, Atomic Red Team and Sigma. So really, really highly recommend you look into these guys. They're great. We talked about merging our project at the beginning, but we had a slightly different approach where I needed content very specifically and for a very limited number of playbooks, and they were more trying to build a framework. It's now not out of the question that the two projects might merge in the future, but right now we chose slightly different path. But still, I encourage you very much. Awesome project. Now let's go over a little bit of what we have at Syntax for our playbook. It's hosted in Git, it's built in Markdown, and all the workflow are in Draw.io. It is open and free, of course, and it's very easy to modify because of Markdown and Draw.io. It is mostly built, as you can see here, on workflow, but we have under that some explanation of what actually goes into that process. And then under that, we have a Markdown file. And the goal here is that all of those points brings you to the procedure. So you're looking at the process, but you have a link to the procedure on how to do various tasks that are in the process. So that's the philosophy behind it. I hope that someday this project becomes the Atomic Red Team or Sigma of detection or incident response playbook, sorry. And now it's time to train your analyst. Because it's not because you or your threat hunter now master this Outlook technique that all of your analysts will understand when they see a VBA project.otm file alerts. I mean, I wouldn't have any idea before I read this and built all of this. So you need to transfer the knowledge to your level ones. And you need to do that in an easy to consume way. Personally, I really love videos so people can watch them on demand. When you get a new analyst in the team, you have your library of video that they can go through, and it's very easy. I think you also need something quicker, such as PowerPoints to support your video, but also some wiki article or something like a web page that an analyst that actually did the thing, but maybe just once or twice, can go and quickly get a reference. So they don't need to go through the video to find the answer they're looking for. They have it somewhere in a page. Um, Palantir has a great framework for that is called ADS. You can look into it, and that's a good way, I think, to document all of your detections, and you can put links in those ADS files um, to all of these things, to the video, to the PowerPoint, to the wiki, depending on what you have. Now it's time for a little bonus. Those are maybe for a more advanced team, but it's now time to think about automation. And when we think about automation, we think about SOAR, security, orchestration, automation, and response. Here are two products that are open source that you can use, Shuffle and Walkoff. I did not use them myself, but I just put them here so that you actually have at least somewhere to start that is free. Here I put some website, but most of the security analysts will go to VirusTotal many times in a day, and they're losing time going there. When you have an alert, your alert should fetch that information for them every time, so they don't need to go there. So that's why I say that automation is important. You'll save 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes per incident or per alert. So in the end of the day, you save a lot of time, and the more you automate, the more time the human has time to do what they're good for, and it's using the brain and not do repetitive tasks. So I put some other example here, like gray noise for getting the IP reputation, or spam house if we're dealing with fish. So this is the end of the deck already, and I really like this image because for me it represents how we, the defender, can stand up to the adversary or the red teams if we unite. We are bigger, we far outnumber them, and yet in most cases I feel that we're always trying to catch up with them. It's always a game of cat and mouse. And the red teamer in particular are sharing a lot more tools and techniques among themselves that the blue teamer are. Or at least I feel like there's a lot more of prominent figure in the red team industry. And I really want to encourage you once again to share more with the community so that we can be stronger together. With that, I want to thank Texas Cyber Summit for having me this year. I want to thank Syntax, my employer, for allowing me to share these things with you. I know that not all employers would do that. And I want to thank you, the listener, to be here and support all of these and make this possible. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of the conference.